made the discovery on all of these artifacts of what was left in the Sea of Mud during their retreat back to Mexico. How did you come across those, and what all did you find?
it's kind of a it's kind of an interesting story. I walked into an examining room one day, and one of my patients' mothers, who they're good friends of ours, said that out on their ranch near Bowling, some guy was finding Civil War artifacts. This was before I knew anything about the Mexican army or anything. So I went out there, and this guy, sure enough, he was finding stuff, and I got all like, "Oh, this is great." I took my dad's old metal detector out there, couldn't find anything, so I ended up getting a new metal detector, and I started finding a little bit, and I started doing some research on Civil War sites, and I stumbled across Philosola's book, and Philosola talked about getting stuck in the mud between the San Bernard and the West Bernard rivers. And I said, "Oh, that's right here. That's right here in Wharton, Texas." I contacted a good friend of mine. His name is Joe Hudgens. He was president of the Houston Archaeological Society at the time. He told me that's a lot of territory, but he said, "You need to talk to people in the area. Talk to people, ask them if they've ever found anything." And I put out the word that I was looking for anything from the Mexican army. And another one of my patients' mothers told me she found a cannonball years ago, like 40 years ago. Of course, that was 20 years ago, so 60 years ago now. I'm pretty sure now that was a Civil War cannonball. It wasn't a Mexican army cannonball. But when we went out to her place and looked at her cannonball, she told me, "Oh, my neighbors down the road found a cannonball 2 weeks ago. If I'd been there 3 weeks earlier, I may never have found the Sea of Mud. But 2 weeks ago, they found a cannonball." So we went to their place, and we started finding stuff the very first day. I found another cannonballs. And then we got the Houston Archaeological Society out there, and they did a very thorough excavation, a metal detecting survey, and we've got we have two publications of Mexican Army sites, and then I ended up writing my book. We found so many artifacts, and I did so much research on it, and I've had all these details about them getting stuck in the mud. And I thought, if I don't write a book, this stuff is going to end up at best in a library or a museum on the shelf, and some very, very, very serious researcher will someday find it and read it and say, "Oh, that's interesting." So I just felt like I had to document it, because I nobody knew about this story. It was like I hadn't seen it in any Texas history books since Andrew Jackson Houston put a little bit about it in his book. Sam Houston's grandson, he put a little bit about the retreat and the Mexican army getting stuck in the mud, but I hadn't seen it in any Texas history books. Philosola talked all about it. De La Pena talked all about it, but it's like it was just totally forgotten. And it's a huge part of the Mexican army's defeat. I mean, they still had 4,000 soldiers, but after they got out of the mud, they were whipped.
Is wild. I can see the being a doctor coming in handy with the checklist. Do you
Mm-hmm.
smoke? Do you drink alcohol? Have you found any artifacts from the Mexican army during their retreat from San Jacinto back to Mexico?
Everybody found out that I was interested in the Mexican army, and I've become the Mexican army guy now. If anybody has questions about the Mexican army, they usually try to get a hold of me.